All right.
That'd be pretty funny.
Office hours 7.
You can throw up the 2 for me. Office hours 7. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
Brendan's in a very Christmas carol-y mood.
I mean,
The
it's
red.
Christmas time. The red. You know what? You're right.
Well done.
I brought it.
But we would like to say happy holidays to everybody. We love kind of every holiday and every celebration.
Let's celebrate.
Let's do it. Jumping right in. Well, I'll go back to this. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just there's no complaints here. Ever.
Fantastic, just like last time.
Are you nervous to be under the knife tomorrow? Nick's having a procedure done.
Yeah. No, never had surgery before, but, I've kind of done self-surgery at times.
Jesus.
Yeah. But that's okay. Don't recommend to do that at home.
Ever. Even if you're not at home, let's just be clear. Even when you're not at home, you should still not do self-surgery. I'm not even going to dip my toe into the realm of what that could have possibly been.
The good old SS. Yeah, we'll save that conversation for another time. But no, I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
Sweet.
I don't know what I'm supposed to feel because I've never really had surgery. So
Should feel normal. Nothing to be afraid of.
right, medicine's pretty advanced. So
We're there.
we are.
We made it.
We did.
So
And we had a really great conversation with Dr. Coget.
Jean-Francois.
He was fantastic.
Yes, such a knowledgeable dude. Glad he was open and willing to have the discussion with us for sure.
Yeah, and he was just so human in his approach to the work, which was so great to hear. Just really hitting home that sense about love. Do you want to explain a little bit about his background or what field he's in for people who did not listen to the episode?
Sure. I'll give you a quick cliff notes on the background that he shared with us. So, born and raised in Luxembourg, moved to Paris for boarding school.
I think it's the opposite. I think he was born in Paris and then moved to Luxembourg.
Somebody fact check us because I think I'm right.
Oh, man. I might be wrong.
Anyways, one or the other.
Yes.
We'll look back on this and laugh at ourselves.
Yes.
And went to a prestigious school in Paris, and from there he got a master's, went and worked for was day trading with Merrill Lynch, is that correct?
Morgan Stanley.
Morgan Stanley, thank you. And decided that he wanted to go back to school, and California was where it was at. So went back and got his PhD from UCLA in management.
And
with
organizational behavior.
Organizational behavior is kind of like his emphasis. Went back and taught briefly at the school he got his undergrad and master's from, and then came back to the California because he said it was calling him, and went and got a job at Cal Poly and had been there for over a decade.
Yeah.
Yep. And then as an associate dean who was looking to continue on the leadership track within business schools, he took a job at another state school to continue to up his creds. They don't, I guess, hire from associate dean to dean level from within your own university, I guess.
Oh, that's a thing?
I mean, that's what he said in the interview.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I caught that. That's wow. Yeah.
So he had to go. That's why he came to Sonoma State. He loves wine. We're going to share a little blurb on a wine test we tried to do in the coming weeks. But so he got a job at Sonoma State, loves it. Just started within 2020. He was funny. He was saying he hasn't really interacted person to person with some of the people he oversees, but yes, as the dean of the business and economics department. And wow, does he have some background and insights?
Yeah. And he was an officer
in the French Navy. Yeah.
Just for fun.
Just to sprinkle that in there.
Yeah. Yes. He did a lot of research in leadership, a lot of research in different contexts of leadership. Like he talked about studying movie directors, studying like famous leaders like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. And he's done all this type of research, and now he's in his own position as a leader in an academic realm. And he just shared a lot of his insights, his reflections. And Brendan, what was your big takeaway?
Big takeaway, huh? You know, thinking back on it, I don't know that I had like one main thing that I really took away. I think overall, I just left knowing that I had like more understanding of the topic of leadership to do. Because I think that being a good leader actually comes down to like, and he talks about this a little bit, is like being self-aware enough and reflecting on yourself enough to understand the style that's going to work for you and the style that's going to work for your employees, and like being the right type of leader at the time and place for the specific people. Like it's so circumstantial, but you can also have an impact on it if you like self-reflect and are able, then I think this was a key point we talked about after, and able to navigate conflict. You know, I think that's the big thing is like, can you work on yourself? Can you be available to other people to like help them get the most out of the circumstances? And then when there's conflict that arises, do you have the intestinal fortitude to navigate that in a way that may be difficult for you as a leader? So I think just that full perspective of like what it takes to be a leader was the biggest, piece I've been reflecting on over the last week or so since we've talked to him.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. And I think there's a lot that is on my mind in what you just said. But why
don't you hit me with it?
I say let's dive into the conflict piece first.
Okay.
Because it was something that we kind of opened up with in the episode, and it was rather unexpected, to be honest. We didn't really talk about that beforehand. And as I've reflected on it more after we did have that conversation, conflict is something that is constantly in our lives. It's constantly something that we're faced with. And we constantly either avoid it or address it. And avoidance is very easy. It's something that I've utilized way too much.
Yeah.
And in the moments to when I've noticed that I haven't been avoidant and I've tackled something and I've faced something and I've addressed it, I've noticed drastic results that I wish would have happened in many different scenarios. And it's so interesting because on one hand, I know that there's a balance in everything, but it's almost like I've heard people say that you just need to be true and honest in everything that you do. And like addressing any type of conflict seems to be the most adaptive way to address it. But are there times to where you need to avoid?
Well, I think the thing that people struggle with is, that's a common sentiment that people share. But I think the difficult part in that is you can be as open, honest, and understanding in any situation as you want. But the first time you get into conflict and somebody's not prepared to treat you that way makes it very easy to want to like retract back into that, like, I just need to avoid this. That was stupid. So yeah, I think that people who try and approach conflict in that way are probably more often than not met with that negative confrontation that they're afraid of. So I think that makes it difficult for people to want to be, try and navigate conflict in a positive way. And that's why I think most people fall into that boat of what you were just describing.
Let's break this down. Why are people avoidant? Well, I know that there's like a general answer to that, but how do people become avoidant? Like what happens? There are several different factors that can be at play, like in your childhood, of how you can become more avoidant than normal, right? There's a multitude of things that we could talk about in terms of trauma or just some past work experience, personality style. But does like our culture encourage? I'll say it again. Well, I'll just cut that.
Yeah.
Does our culture encourage avoidance? Does it encourage addressing conflict? Does it say that conflict's bad?
This is interesting because I think on one hand, within, close social circles, we probably are a lot better at dealing with conflict than with our outside forces, right? And actually, I'm gonna bring this full circle, so like bear with me for a second. I think when people are dealing with their families, their friends, people they see every day, they're like kind of pushed into this environment where like a lot more conflict arises, and they're like, you got to get on with your life, so you deal with it. Whether or not it's resolved in a healthy way or not, I think that is like, based on the circumstances and the situation. But I think for the most part, people are, like you're saying, we're either, you either saw healthy conflict resolution or you didn't in a lot of cases. So I think that's one piece of it. I think another piece of it is, like circumstances, like we kind of mentioned in the interview. He was talking about like the relationship between his kids and there's various types of conflict to be dealing with, and I don't think they always contextualize one-to-one with different situations. So I think sometimes people are really good at dealing with conflict in one way, but maybe not so good in another way. So I think that's like important to recognize too, is that just because you deal with one type of conflict well, maybe you don't others.
Yeah. So quick question then.
Yeah.
Do you think that we get taught how to deal with conflict in the workplace? I didn't really take any classes on this.
My answer is no, but like, yeah, I mean, we do not, because if we did, people would know how to deal with stuff, right? And I mean, even when people are taught, doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to deal with it the right way. But, and what I was going to like try and bring this round full circle to before, and we can jump back into like conflict in the workplace in a second, because I think it's going to relate. We are very on tilt constantly because of manufactured conflict in our lives. And I'm going to bring this all the way back through like the social dilemma, social media, negative parts of social media. Like, and this may be, again, like, what was it, like a week or two ago on one of our posts, we were talking about how you can't turn off a relationship in your life, but you can turn off like your League of Legends game and like stop dealing with the people who are like talking crap or whatever.
Last office hours.
Yeah.
Get into that one.
So I think in the very same way, we're constantly on social media, and we know now that the way these algorithms work on YouTube, on Instagram, is they're trying to get you engaged, and they know people more, dive in more emotionally and engage more strongly with things that are the opposition of what they believed. I would also call that conflict. And I think that conflict being brought up right in front of us on a daily basis in a way where it very much so is never resolved. That is conflict brought up. You have to deal with that in your own life. And again, it shuts off this time where you are then never finding a satisfying resolution to that conflict that's being presented to you, because you're going to get in a screaming match in the comments with somebody. Like, yeah, like you're just causing more conflict for yourself by engaging another person in this thing that you probably already know doesn't agree with your opinion, and there's no chance you're going to change their opinion in a comment on an Instagram post. So yeah, like I think in a weird way, we're constantly triggered. And I think that bleeds into our work life. And now we're looking for other people who align with our perspective. But in doing that, because I think that's like a safety mechanism we have as people, is to align with people who feel like we're in the same tribe. But then on the other hand, we're also in such close proximity to people. And the minute we find out that they don't share a belief with us, like we're triggered by that. And now you and I, let's just say, for example, I'm a Trump supporter and you're a Biden supporter, and all of a sudden I find that out in the workplace, and like we were good coworkers before, we could resolve conflict. Well, maybe now we can't, because I don't even want to approach you about some other conflict we're having. So like all of these things, that's like obviously the most like triggering one in society right now is like politics. But it can be anything. And I think if you're finding out something about your coworkers that you don't like, you're probably less likely to approach them calmly to resolve a conflict. And I think, like, are we ever in this? I don't think humans have adapted in whatever way we may or may not adapt in the future to handle the like psychological repercussions of that constantly infiltrating our day.
We have social media,
yeah. And just like, but the thing about the negative social media impacts is that now it's happening and it's triggering people the same way they do on social media when they're not on social media. So now something that you would be triggered about on social media, your buddy makes by the water cooler. And now, just like you would on social media, you're kind of triggered about that. And you're going to avoid the confrontation in person, and you're not going to deal with that conflict. So like this shit gets dicey, man.
It does.
And I think it's more and more becoming ingrained in society than we realize. And I think the workplace is a great example of how, we maybe have like a different level of responsibility to like make sure we're like handling ourselves in a different way, like, in a weird way. But yeah, I think the conflict resolution piece in general is something that like humanity is struggling with.
How fascinating is it that social media is showing us that that conflict is so innate to who we are, that like our unconscious like lives on conflict and we want to call it out. And that's like what we are meant to do.
Yeah. And I'll say it in a different way, but like we're programmed as human beings to defend against what we perceive as threats in our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And when we perceive a threat, we need to like push back on those threats. Like, before it was a lion trying to eat you and your family. Well, now it's some asshole on Twitter. And like, but like literally like they're hijacking those same primal instincts that we have through like triggering us on social media, making us feel like we're vulnerable and defenseless, that we have to like come charging in and defending our families and our beliefs and our tribe. But like, again, like the term tribe goes so far back because it's like ingrained in us to be tribal people.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
It is wild. And was that a lion pun?
That was a tribal pun.
That's
hunter-gatherer pun.
Well done. Yeah. But yes, I'm with you on this. And in a sense, I think this is what Dr. Coget was hitting on, is that like conflict is so true to who we are. And if we just avoid it and don't address it in a workplace, I know that this is a little different than going like so deep in the roots of conflict. But if we just address it in the workplace, then there can be a lot of productivity that comes out of it. Like what comes out of addressing conflict in a healthy manner is growth.
100%. Yeah.
Right. And the problem is with social media, what comes out of it is going back and forth and nothing gets resolved because it's an immature conversation. It's not civil discourse.
It stunts growth.
It does like almost take a step back, it seems like.
Yeah. And like on a like macro level, right? I'm just thinking about this as you're saying it. We are implementing similar, like I think we probably would have gotten into these types of social conflicts in our daily life pre-social media.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you bring up a great point, is that we would have like either resolved or something would have happened and we would have grown from that. I don't think anybody's growing from the conflict they're having on social media.
Man. Oh, Yes. So I have another point now.
Okay, bring it.
Now that so much work is going remote, like what does that mean? Because conflict in the workplace is very real.
Mm-hmm.
And if I see you in the halls at an office
Mm-hmm.
and there's something or we're in a meeting and there's something that I disagree with, and maybe I don't want to bring it up right away, but I want to talk to you after.
Mm-hmm.
There's something very personal about me approaching you and being face to face and maybe having a good dialogue. But now, if I'm working from home, I can hear something that I disagree with come out of your mouth, and then I can also just say, like, screw it. Like, I just want to detach. Or maybe I'll send an email.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll write in the chat. And now it's like,
or ping one of my coworkers on the side talking some shit.
Yes. Like, how
or whatever
deadly is that?
Yeah, and I think it's brutal, and it makes the job of a skilled manager even that more important, because they are now in a position where if they see something come up in a conversation, in an interaction, like, you have to be so on it with the potential for conflict to go on behind your back that you're not going to see. If you don't address something when it comes up and when it happens, you are allowing negativity to fester within your team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's probably not being talked about enough that managers need this new skill set for managing people, because they even more so are not interacting with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point in the role of a leader in this context.
Yeah.
It is to a different degree now,
Mm-hmm.
being everything from working from home. People don't know like what this means.
Yeah.
And so now going back in like conflict management and conflict resolution within ourselves, growing up and going through high school, and then becoming young adults, I really don't feel like I was informed that I need to be able to approach and deal with conflict in the workplace. I think there's more of an emphasis on dealing with conflict internally or within social relationships, but specifically within the workplace, I feel like the message, for me at least, was more so to avoid conflict to a certain extent, because you want to have good, positive relationships with your peers. You want to present well to your bosses and to your coworkers. So maybe it's not necessarily to avoid conflict, but it's more so that things need to work out well.
Yeah. And isn't it so funny that we are so afraid of like approaching things in the fear that it's going to create some like big negative conflict? It usually never goes as badly as we think. And the only way to get to the positives on the other side of this conflict are to just address it. Yet we're so quick to just be like, I'm not going to do anything about this. And I think intuitively, we all know that, like, if you can address the conflict in front of you, you're probably going to get on better.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, perfect example. I'm going to, leave out some details for anonymity of people who shouldn't be, I don't have their permission to share this story, so I'm going to leave them out. But I was working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car when I got out of college, and I had an employee who was working for me. Yeah, sure. Who had like this consistent BO problem. And we were interacting with customers. We were, interacting with leadership of other branches and like other offices in the area, and like just became a serious reoccurring, like, as pungent gets, like, BO problem. Like, the office stunk, like the cars were starting to stink, and like my coworkers, like, with no intention of harm, like, didn't know what to do, but were talking about it nonstop. And like, it became like this office joke. And for like a week or so. And then at a certain point, I was just like, damn, guys, like, we just have to go like say something to him. Like, is he really going to be that upset if we tell him that he just like
stinks?
Like, we just need to like help him figure this out. Like, the kid, like, my perspective was like, what is he going to go on to his next job, have the same problem, and then they're not going to say anything to him? Like, think about how devastating that could be on somebody's life to go through like years and years of like somebody not bringing this up to them,
or going into a new interview and
and just like
Person
having
is completely
a little
turned
bit of an
off.
odor problem.
Yeah.
So like nobody else, granted, I was the assistant manager, so like I wasn't the manager, but like I had some position of authority within my office, and so I was the person who was like, damn, like I'll talk to him. So like I just like went out to him while he was getting in his car one day and was like, hey, I just got to talk to you really quick. But like it's so easy for everybody to just take like let's do a little bit of office shit talk behind their back and like not do anything and like it'll go away. And like he was an intern, so like he wasn't going to be there the whole time. So like he would have gone on and like it would have been fine. But God, I got to tell you, having that 20-minute conversation, not only did it drastically improve, but he told me afterwards how much he respected the fact that I talked to him about it.
Oh man.
So like it doesn't go as bad. And like, sure, I was nervous as shit when I was about to walk up to him.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I'm about to tell this kid that he stinks.
Yeah.
Like, like, how can I be gentle about this and like want him to know that like genuinely thought he was doing a good job?
Yeah.
Because like
I want to ask, how did you approach it? Like, what did you say?
I just straight, you can't do anything but shoot straight in this situation. Just walk up to him and be like, hey, so-and-so, almost slipped his name. Just want to talk to you really quick. Couple of us noticed a little bit of a excessive BO smell last couple days. Just want to make sure that you were aware. So whatever you got to do to take care of it, you're on it. I don't know if it's like, gave him a couple, jogged his creativity. I don't know if it's not able to wash his shirts, maybe different deodorant, whatever it is. Let's just
maybe natural deodorant.
Just wanted to make sure you knew.
Yeah.
And if we need to get you another shirt, we're more than happy to do that. Like I took a little bit of a stake in like helping resolve the problem. And it was great.
And he responded fantastically.
He gave me the biggest smile.
Oh.
And he was like, thank you for telling me.
Mm.
I mean,
just like that, 20 minutes solved what office talk for like 3 days, 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, he would have been there for 2 more months and we would have been still talking about the same shit.
Oh,
and I just wasn't ready to deal with that.
No.
I was like, let's just solve this fucking problem, people.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. So the moral of the story is if we all just took a little bit of a step towards, and okay, here's a super important part of this that I like, it took, because like before I went and had this conversation, like I reflected on like, how am I going to come off and not sound like an absolute like POS myself, right? like I'm just calling this kid out. And like, first of all, if you're going into a situation with good intentions, like it's really hard to come out the other end feeling like you did something wrong because your intention was good. Like my intention with helping him with that situation was not to hurt him or not to put him on blast in front of his coworkers or not to do whatever. So like having like a real like thoughtful intention of like how am I helping this person? And then even if they get upset, like that's okay because they may need to be upset for a minute to like process and deal with that themselves. But if people looked at conflict that was going on in their own life or in their workplace and thought, how can I address this conflict and be as good intention to wanting to help the other person not continue to be perceived in a way that maybe isn't fair? I think that's super important. The other thing that I think is important is like I said, taking a little bit of the, like if you're not willing to be genuine help, like don't start giving people advice about their life. Like you just need to be better, like,
figure it out.
Yeah. But like giving ideas of how like I can be of support and like, maybe like we got him another shirt. Like that could have been a solution that really worked for him. So like I wasn't coming to the table with just recommendations and no solutions. So have good intention and come to the table with like good solutions that are like not unreasonable. And I think most people can work towards resolving more conflict in their life in a much healthier fashion.
Yeah.
But if you're going into a conflict and all you want to do is take care of yourself in your own situation, you fucked up.
Hey, dude, you smell like ass.
Yeah. You're really, and like that comment, like what you just said, like, no, like I want to use this as an example because I think some people, that's their first thought, right? Like that was maybe like the back behind office banter that was going on. But that leads to somebody who's maybe not going to address this the right way going, hey, dude, like you kind of smell like you need to fix it. Like that doesn't come off like necessarily aggressive, but it's
not supportive.
Yeah. And I'm going to decode what that means is you're having a negative impact on me and I need to be enjoying my workspace better. So you need to do this for me. Mm-hmm. And that's super selfish.
Yeah.
And if people are going to come in thinking about themselves and like, you need to audit your intention when you go into that, because if you're going to, so anyways, could go down the rabbit hole, but it's just important to know that like, if you're going to give somebody a recommendation, like don't be selfish, don't be thinking about yourself, think about how you're going to help that person, have good intentions, and come in with some good feedback for that person on how they can be better. And if they don't perceive it well, that's not your fault.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with what you're saying, so I was going to emphasize the piece about auditing your intention. And with that, you talked about how you like reflected on how are they going to receive it? Is what I'm saying going to come off the right way? Like that piece is super important because I think people can be well-intentioned, not reflectively think about what the other person might feel and how this might come off, and then say whatever they're going to say and have it be terrible.
Yeah, you can have
like
the best
impact could be really rough, and the intention won't even be received at that point.
Correct.
And that's a problem too.
Intention doesn't inform selflessness.
Yes.
And you can have good intention and be super selfish.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was like kind of my caveat I threw in there too. And because I agree is I can really want to help this kid and be like, hey dude, like you should really think about like showering and throwing on an extra layer of deo in the morning. You know what I mean? And be like, but like that doesn't sound like I'm trying to help him. That sounds like I'm trying to make my workplace not stink.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think auditing your intention and like all that, like, yeah, for sure has to happen.
Yeah. The intention and the impact.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Well done on the conflict resolution.
I definitely, it became one of those things where I was like, in the moment, in the time all of this was unfolding, I was like, dang, this is a difficult problem that people need to learn how to do. Like I was consciously like, I need to learn how to do this. This will not be the last time I have a difficult conversation with somebody who I'm working with. So I just, kind of took the challenge, I guess. Yeah.
I need to embrace more difficult conversations, I feel.
Yeah.
It's a good practice.
And I think, as much as I, am like tooting my own horn by sharing that story, which was like I hadn't even thought of that story in like years, but
I saw a plaque of it on your wall, Brendan.
Plaque made by me, signed by me, for me,
with a picture of you like giving this guy deodorant.
Yeah. But that's a super easy conflict resolution, right? Like that's like baby steps conflict resolution.
Yeah, do we want to talk like big $1 trillion company CEO?
Yeah, like there's real conflict resolution that needs to happen. Like serious stuff, like sexual harassment. And like granted, like there's a legal process and like much more policy around sexual harassment versus like dude needs to wear deodorant. But like you got to start somewhere. And if you can't have the conversation about somebody like respectfully with somebody who needs to like maybe change their hygiene habits or something, you're definitely not going to have any kind of confidence going into something more serious.
Yeah. And you're going to have a lack of trust for the people who are in the power. Like if your leadership is not taking charge and doing those necessary things that they need to do as a result of these actions, then people below are going to feel complete distrust, and the culture is just going to be very negative. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be very conflict ridden.
Yeah.
Which is bad. It's going to be bad conflict though, not good conflict that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not BO conflict.
Yeah. God, I wonder, there's got to be a best practice here but I wonder how, because like for every one conflict in this scenario that I like did right, I probably just like swept 1,000 under the rug. You know what I mean?
100%, yeah.
So I wonder how, like, what that best practice could be for people who are in a leadership role or have a coworker situation where they feel like there's a little bit of conflict that needs resolving. You know, because I only knew about this piece of conflict because it was put right in my face by my coworkers talking about it. But if you don't hear people talking about it and you just notice it one time, or it's just brought up one time, I feel like we need to train, like, not only do we need to train on resolving conflict, but we also need to train on identifying conflict, because I feel like it's so easy to let things just get swept under the rug too.
I feel like this comes into the self-reflection piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Like sitting back on your week and being like, are there any moments that really stood out to me that like I felt like could fester if I don't resolve them? Or were there any interactions that I didn't feel good about after? Or were there any comments made on the group chat or on the team call, you know, now that we're doing everything on Zoom, that like, you know, felt a little aggressive between two people and like maybe I just need to intervene as a manager or something. Those are the types of like we're saying before, those are the types of things that managers are going to need to start to skill up on in an era of Zoom meetings all the time.
Yeah. I feel like just writing down stuff each day. I mean, of course, I don't want to just focus on the conflicts that I'm experiencing every day. But at the same time, I think there's a power to addressing them. And I feel like if I was able to journal at the end of my workday, reflect on just what my day was like and process more, identify some conflicts, identify some positive things, then I think that I could just be more self-aware. Because the days are so busy. People
are going to stop and journal potential conflicts throughout their day, right? Like that's tough.
Yeah. The excuse is that we don't have time to do that. We do. You can make 5 minutes of time to do this. And I'm guilty of this, of not taking 5 minutes, but it might be something I might challenge myself to journal when I do go back to work, which is a couple weeks. So
yeah,
stay tuned for the update in like a month. But that's, I think that could be best practice to start.
I have another question for you on this topic.
Shoot.
To push it a little further. Where do you think the ability of, like, we're talking about self-awareness and like self-reflection in this. What about for the a large number of people who get into management positions who like have no ability to self-reflect? Like this isn't even on their radar. So how, let's say you're a manager of managers, or, you know, I know a lot of companies have like different types of employee assistance programs where like maybe like a psychologist is a resource within the company, maybe through a third party, but like they at least have this network of resources for their employees. How can, in that setting, like where do you think the ability to help people get into the habit of this self-reflection can come into play, like, and maybe drop some psychology bombs on us?
At its core, I think that being a good leader is being somebody who's humble. I think humility is at its like just framework, right? Like,
do you think that's something that is like learned from our youth, or do you think you can develop humility in older age? Can you teach an old dog new tricks?
I think you can develop it a little bit. Personality is stable over time for the most part. And I think that that's tough. I think that humility is something that is, if it's practiced in youth, then it will definitely like be more evolved as we get older. And when it's not practiced in youth, I think it's really difficult to have somebody who's not humble and like really humble them.
How do we see that practiced in youth? Do you have any like...
My personal experience. My mom made me very, like, she told me about humility like 24/7. She always told me in all my sports that you'll never be the best. Like you can be good, but there's always going to be somebody that's better than you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important to remember. And she always just talked about how like there needs to be a community in your sports. Like you need to cheer on your teammates. If that means you sitting on the bench at times and letting others play, there's a huge value to that.
Mm-hmm.
But really at its core, she hit home that there's always going to be somebody who's better than you in whatever you do. And if you're the best, bravo, because
Yeah.
that's impressive. But
to your point, even the best, like a Messi, even probably looks at half of or more of the skills that he has and is like, well, Cristiano Ronaldo's better.
Yeah, or he
and
looks
vice
at
versa. Right.
RIP.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think like if you don't have that capacity to be humble at all in a leadership role, then you're not going to be able to be followed. Like if you think about the leaders that you've looked up to in your life, they're probably people who are pretty humble and that you think were in their role and were like could be seen as even better than what the role that they were in.
You mean like they were too good for their role, maybe?
Almost.
Yeah.
The best
Okay.
leaders that I've had in my life, I'm like, wow, you should be more than what you are right now almost. And those people were humble people who, so this is my point, is that I think humility informs empathy. When you're humble and you can think about others, that's when you start to really develop some empathy and you start really caring and putting yourself in other people's shoes. And if you can't do that as a leader, then you're just going to have followers. You're not going to have like a community. You're not going to have a culture. It's just going to be people that are following whatever you're doing. And maybe there's, like we said, like lone genius, maybe there's some serious success in that. But for me personally, I don't think that that's like the kind of culture and vibe that I'd fit best with.
Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like you're talking about the idea of like, and this humility and being humble and being empathetic kind of will inform a form of servant leadership. And these servant leaders, and it actually even goes back to our conversation with Marianne, how she was talking about leaders that she feels like have done the best and deserve the most recognition are typically the ones who've gotten the least. And these people in these roles that maybe they're too good for, but they've decided that the best way that they can lead and push whatever industry or task they're in forward is by being a leader and showing people the right way of doing things.
Yeah, I think there's a huge value to that does not get honored enough. And maybe it does more so now, but those people who are leaders who are like grinding and just like really being a people person and being somebody that just supports any type of employee, man, those are the leaders that our world needs.
Yeah.
So what was your question exactly? It was like how people who aren't humble, who are more like steadfast or like really hard-nosed in the management role, like how do they
like if we have somebody
culture?
who doesn't, in these conversations we've like listed a few traits that we feel like maybe some of these good leaders have, or somebody who can self-reflect, think back, be selfless, have humility, show empathy. Like what if you just have a leader who really doesn't have those? Are they a lost cause to a certain degree as a leader, not as a human being, obviously. But let's say, here's an example. If I work at a place and my manager does not show any of these characteristics we're talking about, doesn't self-reflect, has maybe too much ego, and doesn't show empathy, is conflict avoidant, all these things, and I feel like this is causing me stress in my life, should I just find a new job rather than think that there's any way that this person will ever change?
Yeah, my gut reaction is yes, that you should try to put yourself in a better situation. I tend to be optimistic, and so I'm hopeful that like this person might have some good traits and that there might be a balance to what we were talking about in the interview. How maybe there's a different top ranking employee or other type of manager who can offset some of these traits, and
maybe find
hopefully there's
a mentor
balance.
from another department who can help like guide you through, and so you don't have to eventually long-term be in under that person's employ anymore.
Yeah, because we talked about Steve Jobs and how, like, people talk about him how he was just like a psycho. Like, he was just insane. And at the same time, if he didn't have that insanity and that drive, and that, like, almost not being empathetic to people and just like knowing what he wants to do and telling people to do that, then I don't know if the company would have excelled as it did.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like, what is the balance there? Was it worth it? He might have caused some significant harm to a lot of people. And I don't know exactly like what his family life's like. But yeah, I think that's where we get into this weird situation of like, what's net positive, and do we just accept the losses that come with that and then say, okay, it is net positive because it's $1 trillion company that's really innovated and pushed our world to a different level. And I think with that too, there has to be these other top ranking employees under Steve Jobs, like Dr. Coget was saying,
Mm-hmm.
that are empathic and loving and have this nurturance, because or else no one would stick around unless that's the leader that you align with. Like, unless your personality traits really fall under that and say like, hey, yeah, I don't give a shit what you care about me. Let's just do the best work that we can. And that's all I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm also thinking in that same context, I wonder how much of a factor it is when somebody like a Steve Jobs is that like much of a drill sergeant, but equally holds himself to the same, if not higher standard. Like, is there a level of respect that comes along with that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, damn, he's asking me to do like some crazy hours to like perfect a product, but like he's perfecting 7 pieces of this project and he's asking me to just do design, and he's like working on the camera and getting the camera the best it can possibly to fit in like this small form factor of like the first ever iPhone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if I think there's a respect level for somebody's efforts that can maybe offset some of the negative. And I think overall intent matters in that. You know, I think if somebody can step back, maybe do a little self-reflection and look at what the greater context of what they're working on is, maybe they can get more buy-in on like like we're trying to do something that's never been done. Like, we're trying to put out a product that's going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it for sure has.
Yeah.
So like maybe those types of projects demand that, you know, almost insane level of, you know, effort, dedication, and like grit.
Yeah.
Like insane levels of grit, you know?
Yes, you're definitely hitting something there with like with a level of respect. I feel like some other factors can be mitigated.
Yeah.
And having that respect for somebody like that is,
I think it
like,
kind
so
of
important.
Still haven't seen, you know, the Jordan documentaries, but I feel like that's a lot of what I know about Jordan is that it was like he was literally trying to make you better, and he held you to an absurd standard.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it like, and there's a respect factor in that because you knew he was working just as hard as he wanted you to work.
Yes, and like you said, the intent piece, like, it's because people are able to read what their intent is.
Mm-hmm.
It's because people are able to read that Steve Jobs' intent isn't to be a dick to all his workers. Like, that's not his purpose. His purpose is to innovate and progress technology as far as it can go.
Yeah.
And be creative. And people like cling to that because they're like, hell yeah, I want to be creative. I can do these things.
Mm-hmm.
That's inspiring. So it goes back to like intent and like your why.
Yeah. Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
If
He lays it out for us right there.
That, I can't like say how true that is.
The Golden Circle's TED Talk is ridiculous. Like, people need to like that concept. People just need to understand.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, because it applies to everything we do in our life.
Yeah. It's the central driver for why we do things. It's your why.
What's our why? I know what it is.
two dudes just being some bros, hanging out with a couple guys. Bro.
I mean, yes.
Trying to talk the talk and walk the walk.
And also to share as much helpful information with people.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah. That we think is probably only in the realms of $40K a year in a classroom. So,
right. Do people, well, and that's the thing too, is like, I think at a certain point we're, if I was to like put again, another macro perspective on what I think, like down to its core, what we're trying to do. I think we're trying to educate ourselves in areas that we have interest in, that we think are valuable and important. I think in society, it is important to be educated on the topics that we're like trying to get into. But I think we're also trying to contribute to the at scale volume of helpful information that is on the internet, so we can hit some kind of information critical mass on the internet, so that people do not have to pay 40 grand to go learn a ton of stuff and then come out the other side. Maybe you can, maybe in 10 years, we've got 500 videos and you can watch every psychology video and come out the other side with a little bit of research on things that you need to know, like a deep dive in. And then, maybe, like, I don't know that translates full on to education, but maybe it helps you not need 2 degrees because you got one that you realize you're not really interested in, or yeah. So there's just a lot of, good that comes out of just like experiencing and tasting all these other little topics and, things that we're trying to dive into. So if we can help other people discover those things, maybe tap into their why a little bit.
Yeah. Critical thinking. That's what we're preaching. We want everybody to think critically about the topics that we talk about and the information that we put out, because I think that's something that we've fallen in love with as we've matured, and we've wished that we would have been able to think critically more so when we were younger. But goddamn, right now is a beautiful time to think critically.
So true.
I think we can end it right here.
Let's do it.
That was great conversation, Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Well done. And to anybody listening or to our viewers, we want to thank you, because this has been a lot of fun, and the support just makes this even more fun.
So true, Nick.
So that was from the heart. That was from love.
I felt loved.
God damn it. So yes, this is the end of Office Hours episode
7.
Dr. Coget. Our next episode will be dropping next week. We get a little bit, we dive into a different topic this time.
Not too different.
A little different. Oh, I'm thinking about in a month.
Nick.
Next, yes.
We have 2 lined up and Nick keeps confusing them. Our next one isn't that different. The one after that is very different.
Yes.
We can tease it anyway because it's a month out, so you're going to have to wait. We talked to a nutrition science professor.
Yes.
Super fascinating. Nick and I come preloaded with plenty of questions, but our next one is again on the psychology side. It's fascinating, super practical. That's what I love about this one. So if you want some practical self-help psychology and some great resources to continue to learn about psychology, you are definitely going to want to tune into our next episode. It is a must.
Yes. If you want to learn about yourself, boom.
And if you want to pre-study for this episode, go look up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and just become familiar with that if you're not already. And we're going to get into it.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
And you know what? Just like that, bada bing, bada boom, and Bob's your uncle. We're out.